Hello and welcome back to another Maya tutorial. This time we're looking at how to cut holes through different objects. So in this example I've got a basic cube and I want to cut a hole right the way through that. And to cut a hole we need to use an additional object. So I'm going to use a cylinder, and you can see I've got my menu set on modelling and my shelf on polygons. So I'm going to go ahead, choose a cylinder, and I'll make that to the right width, and it needs to be long enough to go right the way through our object. And we can rotate that round, and it needs to be exactly 90 degrees. So we can go over to the channel box and we can see that's rotate Z, and currently the 88.7 needs to be changed to 90. So type in 90, press enter, and then position the cylinder so it's going right the way through the object. Now, if you were to use the very middle of the grid, if you had the cube and the cylinder in the centre of the grid, everything works very easily, but I'm going to leave this above the grid and I'm going to have the hole cut off centre on purpose so I can show you the worst case scenario, the most amount of work you need to do to actually cut a hole. Now, if I deselect these, you can see we can't really see both objects too well at the same time, so we need to turn our wireframe on shaded on. Underneath the shelf we've got a shading menu, and then tick wireframe on shaded, just so we can see that. And we now need to think ahead. We need to think about how many divisions we might want on the actual hole, and we need as few as possible. The default 20 on a cylinder is too high. Now we need to consider the number of edges on the front and back face of this cube. There's 4 there, and we need to think what will go into 4 quite well. We can't make a 4-sided hole because it won't smooth very well, but we can make an 8-sided. Now 8 and 4 do go together well because we can split this 4-sided face up into 2 each way, so we have a total of 8 edges, so it matches the hole. So we can select the cylinder, go to the channel box, inputs polycylinder 1 or whatever the name is of your object, and then we can change the number of divisions along the axis from 20 down to 8. So type in 8 and press enter, and now we need to be able to smooth this later on. So if we select our cube, I'll go back to the select tool, and if I try smoothing that there, you'll find it won't work. If we press 3, it just distorts. So press 1 to unsmooth that. We need to add some divisions so we can smooth the cube without it distorting. So go up to your mesh tools, insert edge loop, and we can add some divisions. So if you haven't used this tool before, you just click, hold the mouse button in and drag, and then release the mouse button where you want your divisions. If you go right to the end, they'll disappear. You need to leave a slight gap. We'll do the same on the other side, the same towards the top, and then the bottom. And finally we can rotate round to the side and do 2 more vertical divisions. 1 at the back and then 1 at the very front. That way, if we right click and go back to object mode, go back to your select tool, you can select your cube, and if you smooth that by pressing 3, it maintains its sharp edges. So press 1 to unsmooth it, because we generally model unsmoothed, we only smooth at the end or to see how it looks. And we now need to think about how we can split this cube up, only really this front and the back face, to actually match our cylinder. We can use the edge loop tool again, so go back to mesh tools, insert edge loop, and we'll put a vertical division in as close to the center of the cylinder as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect, but close. And then 1 horizontal division. Go back to object mode, and now to actually cut the hole, use your select tool, select the object that you want to actually cut a hole into first, hold shift and select the cylinder or the object that you want to use to cut the hole. And this will disappear after. If you want to keep this, you'll need to duplicate it before we apply this next step. So select the cube, shift, select the cylinder, go to Mesh, Booleans, and then Difference. And that will cut a hole right the way through. Or if your cylinder only goes part of the way through, it will stop where the cylinder stops. Now we need to have a look at the vertices. So if we right click and go to vertex mode, if we have a look at this vertical and horizontal division going through the center of what used to be the cylinder, you'll find the vertices aren't merged yet. There's actually two there. If we're going quite close, you can see there's two. Now, if you haven't yet looked at my combining and merging tutorial, have a look at that and you can see how to actually combine and merge different components properly. We need to use what we call the poly count, which are these additional numbers at the top left corner here. To open that, go to display, heads up display, and then poly count. And in vertex mode, I'll highlight what looks like these two vertices. And to make sure we just have two selected, we can look at the poly count, and on this far right hand column at the top it says there's two selected. To merge them, go to Edit Mesh and then Merge, and we can do the same on the side here. We can just highlight that. We don't have to go in too close because we can use the poly count now to see that there's two. If it said 3 or more, you may have accidentally selected some vertices on the other side of your object. So maybe just rotate around a bit and then highlight that again. Just make sure your poly count does say 2. Edit Mesh and then Merge. The same at the bottom. Highlight the 2, check it's 2, Edit Mesh, Merge, and then again on the left hand side, Edit Mesh, Merge. And then we need to do the same on the other side of the object as well. You could do it from here, or if you find it easier, just rotate around your object and we can do the same again. So select the 2 at the top, Edit Mesh, Merge, the 2 on the right, Edit Mesh and Merge. Make sure you're using the poly count to make sure you just have 2 selected, and we can use it afterwards to make sure there's just 1 so we know it's actually merged down. Finally the 2 on the left, Edit Mesh, Merge. And now if we go back to the front of the object, we can look at these faces, and I'll go back to object mode and I'll go back to the select tool. And if we have a look at some of these faces, they currently have, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges. We need to split that up so it's got 4. We want to model with just quads. And we can do that by adding another edge from the corner of our circle here, our hole, going up to the very corner of the cube. And we can do that by using a new tool in Maya 2016. That's in Mesh Tools, and then the multi-cut tool. It takes a bit of practice, but basically if we zoom in closer, just by moving around you can see it snaps to edges and also vertices. And if I, without clicking, just move away from this vertex, I can actually draw another edge. Now if I click there, it will actually put an edge exactly where you see it. So we need to go back until the vertex is red, click on it once there, go up to the top right corner, and not the very outer corner of the cube. If I zoom in a bit closer, not this very outer corner, but the next one in here, click on that and then press enter. And that will add a new division in. So you can see this face here has 4 edges. We've got 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and then also 4 below that as well. And we can now work our way around and do the same technique. So using the multi-cut tool, make sure the vertex is highlighted red so it clicks on exactly that. Click on that once, and then the other vertex towards the bottom, not the very outer one but the next one in, and press enter. If you need to zoom in closer, do. So when the vertex is red, click on that once, and then the next one down here, click on that, press enter. The same on the top left corner, click on the vertex, click on the second vertex, press enter, and then the same on the other side. So click on the actual vertex itself, and then the next vertice, press enter. And if you make a mistake, just press enter and then press Z to undo that. So, for example, if I did just click outside here, I don't want to put a division there. So I'm just going to press enter and then Z a couple of times to go back until you can click on the vertex itself. And then just press enter to confirm that. Final vertices. And there we go. So to turn the tool off, just go back to your select tool and I'll right click and go to object mode. And if we try smoothing that there, it's almost done. We've got a nice circle, almost a complete circle, but it's still a bit distorted. So we can press 1 to unsmooth that and then use the edge loop tool one last time. So mesh tools, insert edge loop, and I'm going to click and drag from inside the cylinder. Now, if your loop doesn't go right the way around, that means there's vertices that haven't yet been merged, so you might want to check that. So just towards the front, and I'll rotate around, 1 towards the back, go back to object mode, select tool, select your object, and then try smoothing that. Now, if you want this edge sharper again, like the edges of the cube, we can put another edge loop around there. So press 1 to go back to unsmoothed, mesh tools, insert edge loop tool again, and we'll put another one just behind the last one we put in there. The same at the back. If you make a mistake like that, just release the mouse and press Z to undo it. So one more loop just there, right click, object mode, select tool, select the object, and then try smoothing that. See how that looks. Now that's much sharper. And if you want to see this without the wireframe, just go back up to shading and untick wireframe on shaded and then deselect your object. So you've now got a sharp cube with a really sharp edge on the front of this hole, but a nice round hole going all the way through. So practice it, make sure you think ahead. There's a bit of maths involved, so you'll need to make sure the number of divisions on the hole can be equal to the number of divisions you have on the faces that you want to cut through.